Alrighty, we should be live. Nathan Bunnett, episode 69, guys. Let's go ahead and get it started. Let me know what you guys think of this new layout. I've tried this layout before with the draft and everything, but that was when I was sitting at my desk. Now I have the new layout with this camera angle. So let me know if you guys like this sort of layout, if you want me to just keep it like the last video and just have it on only webcam. But I kind of like this layout. I think it gives more of a professional vibe to it, sort of like an ESPN, vibe to it. But let me know what you guys think. So, and as always, you guys can go ahead and follow me on Instagram as well. That's down there in the new layout as well, and it's always been in the description. So Nathan Bunnett with 3 T's on Instagram. And these episodes are also recorded live over on twitch.tv/easygingy. It's in the description as well. So be sure to check that out, guys. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is D Wade's statue, because that has been a story the last couple of days. I'm recording this on Monday, October 28th, so they just released the statue, I think, either last night or the night before. It was either Saturday, Sunday, something like that. And that does not look like D Wade. Shocker, I have the same opinion as many others, but that straight up does not look like D Wade. I do think it looks better than the Allen Iverson statue, though. The Allen Iverson statue was good. The thing was, everybody just called the Allen Iverson statue small. But at least the Allen Iverson statue kind of looked like Allen Iverson. But the D Wade statue straight up looks like a different player and a different guy. And, of course, everybody was joking about that, where D Wade says, "Who is this guy?" And, as a celebratory thing. And all the comments are talking about, no, he's legitimately asking who is that guy, because that's not him. And I mean, that's hilarious, but that straight up is a different person. And I don't know who they hired to do the statues. I know there was a big question of if it's a local guy and if they need to start reaching out to different statue makers beyond Florida, but that's just a bad statue. It's not as bad as the Ronaldo statue, but it's still pretty bad. I had people joking that it looked like Antoine Walker, which was pretty accurate. People saying it looked like just so many different people except D Wade. I saw somebody joke that it's not D Wade, it's ABC Wade, which was pretty funny. But yeah, that statue does not look like D Wade at all. And I don't know what they're going to do about that. I mean, obviously they're probably just going to keep it, unfortunately, because that's just what you do. But we'll see if they release a press statement or whatever they do about the statue. We'll see what happens, but that is not D Wade. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the other topics. So I want to mention again that I am working on an indie game. Talked about that a little bit last episode. No new stuff really going on with that because I'm still working on a trailer to get released. I commissioned somebody to make a trailer for the game, which will be the opening cutscene to the game. And so once that gets finished, I will try and show that to you guys. Once again, all information about the game is in the Instagram that is linked in the description, all that good stuff. So hopefully you guys can follow that Instagram and support me with that as well. I have some people currently working on some more art. I have 2 of my close friends working on music as well. One of them is actually Vespid, who is working on music, who is the same guy who makes my intro and outro music. So if you guys are a fan of the intro and outro music, some of the other music I have on the channel, you might like some of the music in the game. So again, somebody that I know, somebody that's familiar to the channel, making music for the game. So I think that's pretty cool. But let's get on with some more basketball stuff. Bronny James went to G League. I think everybody kind of saw that happen. Um, I think LeBron just wanted one game with him, which he got, and then he was off to G League to develop. We'll see how much pull LeBron has with that, cause or how much LeBron's feelings influence that, because I think LeBron knows deep down that Bronny has to go to the G League to develop, but at the same time, obviously he wants to play with Bronny. So it's kind of like, what does he want more? Does he want his son to actually succeed, or does he want just the glory of the father-son duo? But with Bronny James brings me into the whole new era discussion. And I kind of talked about this before in another episode as well. But with Derrick Rose retiring, that also sort of brings it up. With this is truly like we're going into a new era. You know, everybody sort of divides eras up by decades. But um like LeBron, Curry, KD, Harden, probably Kawhi, because everything happening with Kawhi, which we'll get into, they're all going to be retiring soon, and we're going to soon get some players that will be able to share the spotlight more, and that's really exciting for me because I really want to see more of these younger players. You know, for people that may not have grown up with Reggie Miller for the Indiana Pacers, you know, they get Tyrese Halliburton. For people that didn't grow up with Kevin Garnett and Ricky Rubio and stuff like that on the Timberwolves, they get at least Anthony Edwards and Naz Reid. And I don't know. It's always, for me personally, it's always fun to see like the new era come in, because whenever I started watching basketball was really the turnaround from the 90s to the 2000s, and then I got to see the turnaround from the 2000s to the 2010s, and now we're seeing even more of a turnaround of the 2010s to the 2020s. So it's exciting. Oh, one of the things I wanted to talk about most that I titled this episode after, at least on the Twitch stream, is the Pistons had 6 people on the court. And you heard that correctly. The Pistons had 6 people on the court at one time. They got a technical foul for it. And this just goes to show that I don't think there's really any fixing the Pistons at this point. The Pistons are so down bad that it's just incredible. Like, I really don't like diminishing NBA players because, I mean, they're in the NBA. They're going to beat like 95 to 99% of any person that just plays basketball that's not in the league. But some of the Pistons players, or the Pistons roster, aside from some good people on the roster like Cade Cunningham, it really, like, 6 people on the court, it makes you wonder if they just forget how to play basketball. And my worry is I really hope that people don't blame JB Bickerstaff for this, because I made a whole video before about coaches have sort of become the scapegoat for trashy teams. And I really don't want JB Bickerstaff to get the blame for this, because obviously it was a substitution issue. There wasn't really communication. Something happened. But JB Bickerstaff, from what I've seen at least, is a pretty decent coach. And I really don't want him to really tank as a coach just from the fact that he's coaching the Pistons and has to take the brunt of it. Because we kind of saw that with Monty Williams a little bit. Monty Williams was successful with the Suns, and then he had to go to the Pistons, and then he made a lot of mistakes with the Pistons, but no coach would be able to go in there and save the Pistons. And now people think he's one of the worst coaches of all time, aside with Darvin Ham. And it seems like coaching for the Pistons now, because of these mistakes is just a death sentence to Coach's career. And I really don't want that for JB Bickerstaff or any coach, really, because we have some really good coaches in the league now. And obviously we have some bad ones too. But I think JB Bickerstaff could be a good coach on a good team. But right now he's out to look sort of as the bad guy because he's coaching for the Pistons. So I really don't want him coaching the Pistons or this technical foul issue to ruin his reputation. But at the same time, something's got to be said about having 6 people on the court because that's just kind of ridiculous. So Draymond Green also had a technical foul only 2 quarters into the season. Barely even made it to halftime of the first game before having a technical foul. And, of course, that's nothing new with Draymond. That's always been a joke. But the reason I wanted to touch on it is because they panned the camera to Steph afterwards. And Steph was visibly angry and, like, crying and, like, aggressive. And it just goes to show that Curry is aware of Draymond's antics, and he's starting to get fed up with it as well. You know, Steph Curry obviously lost KLAY as well, so he doesn't even have KLAY anymore. Draymond was responsible for KD leaving, was responsible for Jordan Poole leaving. I almost forgot his name. Was responsible for Poole leaving. So Draymond really has crumbled the Warriors. And I know that's been sort of conspiracy for a little bit and people have made videos on it. But I think the evidence is really starting to peer through now more than ever, especially when you see Curry's visual reaction to when stuff like this happens. People are starting to become more and more sick of Draymond's shit. And I don't know what that's going to mean for Steph Curry. I know I'm not going to say like, oh, Steph Curry's going to request a trade because he's sick of Draymond. I don't think it'll ever get that crazy because Curry also has a lot of respect for Steve Kerr. But something is going to happen where Curry gets pushed past the breaking point. I don't think Curry's going to retire anytime soon either because he just won a championship a little while ago. And sorry, I got a text and I completely lost my train of thought. My mom's blowing up my phone right now. But I don't think Curry's going to retire anytime soon because he just won a championship a little while ago. And it seems like he really does still want to play and really does enjoy basketball and enjoy the league. And he's still making these crazy shots. But he may try to see Draymond traded away because he doesn't have KLAY anymore. Rather than him leaving the team, he may push for Draymond to leave the team. Especially because there was an issue last time Draymond's contract was up for extension. And there was a lot of debate there about whether he was going to get extended. And me personally, I've never been a fan of Draymond anyway, so I'm kind of happy with all this where, again, more people are getting sick of Draymond's shit because I have always been one of the people that thinks that Draymond does this shit on purpose. I know there are some people out there that say that Draymond stepping on Sabonis was an accident and things like that, but I personally think that Draymond brings a lot of this shit on himself, and you can agree, you can disagree, but I really am not a fan of Draymond, and I am front row tickets to his downfall, is all I'll say. Going into some other games, I watched the Spurs-Houston game. With Houston, I watched the Sengun. Sengun only had 6 points, and I watched him on the court. Seemed really uncoordinated, kind of just wandering around, not doing much for the Rockets. Jalen Green, on the other hand, I thought was doing very well. He's really developed past his rookie season. And I know that's kind of been the motto of Rockets fans last couple years where Jalen Green was sort of doing meh for the first few years he was in the season. And a lot of the Rockets fans said, oh, just wait until he develops, wait until he gets into like year 3, year 4. And now we're seeing that. And Jalen Green, I think, really has the opportunity to really blossom and be a really good player, like some of these younger players we're seeing, like Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, things like that. I also think that Terry Eason doing very well for Houston as well. And Van Vliet was also doing pretty good. I think the Rockets bringing in Van Vliet has definitely helped with Jalen Green's development. So there's that. With the Spurs, Champagnie is doing amazing. He seems to almost be our star player right now, even above Wemby. I know that's crazy to say, but if you haven't watched the games, I encourage you to go watch the games. Champagnie is actually doing phenomenal right now. And that was a bit unexpected because before this season, he was kind of this player that not many people knew too much about. Everybody thought that we just got this random player, Again, Spurs before the Kawhi days didn't make very many trades. And now when we make trades, it's for these, 70 overall players that not many people have heard of and then are usually off the roster within a few years. But Champagnie is doing amazing. Great shooting, great in the paint, great passing, just all around a really excellent player. Sohan as well has really improved. Me and Clan the Spurs fan both have been on this huge, we've been on the Sohan train for a while, and we've told people, like, just wait until Sohan develops. Wait until Sohan really unlocks his potential, which is why we were tanking and why we were having Sohan play the guard for so long, is to really unlock his potential. And he's starting to do that. I think he had something like 17 points the other night. And Sohan is really coming out of his shell and really doing amazing. And I'm excited to see more of that. With Castle, we're seeing really good basketball IQ. I really like his passes, being able to drive through the paint, doing what he needs to do. And I think a lot of that also comes from Chris Paul and his development. Chris Paul is known as the point god. We saw a lot of that in the Houston game and the Dallas game as well with Chris Paul's playmaking, which I really enjoyed. Harrison Barnes seems to be fitting pretty well. Ironically enough, Wemby is actually the most critical player I'm going to be most critical on for my game analysis. Wemby was doing a lot of three-pointers, which a lot of people commented on. He seemed that he was actually a bit more rusty than last year when it came to the paint. And I know Popovich also made a comment on that, saying that Wemby still has a little bit of rust on him, and it's going to be a while before he hits his prime. Everybody really wants Wemby to be most improved player this season, but it seems like he kind of, as far as in the paint, he's gone down a little bit actually. And because of that, we are seeing him shoot a lot more threes, which luckily he was making, but I would definitely love to see Wemby play a lot more in the paint. And that could be just his own decision. That could be Wemby just wanting to play outside the arc more, or it could be a coaching and development position where they don't want him in the paint as much because they don't want him to get injured by being in the paint, because he is still much skinnier than other players. But again, like I saw a comment a couple days ago after the game that said, Wemby, you're not Steph Curry. Stop taking these logo threes. I don't care if you make it. And I thought that was really funny. And it's true. Like, Wemby, he may be making these threes, but he really needs to go to what he excels at, which is inside the paint. And I want to see more of that. And he was missing some shots in the paint, which was shocking to me. So, OKC defense, I really think that OKC can go far this season. And if they do, I have said this many times in many past episodes of the podcast, but defense wins championships. I have been on that train. I have stayed true to that my entire quote unquote basketball career, if you want to call it that. Like before I even started podcasting, whenever I watched basketball, I was always defense over everything. And a lot of people disagree with that because, the Boston Celtics, they have one of the highest offensive ratings this year. And they're breaking records for threes, which I'll get into. And they just won the championship last year. But OKC was also the number one seed last year, despite losing to Dallas in the not conference finals, semifinals, because then they played the Timberwolves. Yeah. Um, Even though they lost to Dallas, OKC's defense is really where they thrive, especially after they got Caruso. And I pulled up the team advanced stats for the NBA, because I like looking at teams' advanced stats because it's not always just about points, but obviously it's only 3 games into the season, but the Thunder are currently ranked number 1 for defensive rating at only 90.8 points per game, which is really good. And again, I know that's going to change because it's only 3 games into the season. I, in fact, looked at this yesterday, and yesterday was 84 points per game. So it went up 6 in just a day. But in second place is the Warriors with 95. So even just from first to second is a whole 5-point difference. And then to third place, the Clippers have 103.2. So that's a 13-point difference between the Thunder and the Clippers. My point being that the Thunder have excellent defense, and I really didn't want that to go unnoticed or uncommented on. And I really think that they can go far this season, even obviously with SGA and Chet's playmaking, but I think with their defense, they can also go really well. If they can keep that up and keep teams under 105 a game, that will be really beneficial for them, because I made a whole video on the stats for each season league wide, and it's been years since the league average for points has been under 110 to 105. So if they can keep their defensive rating under 105, they're really going to see some success. Speaking of success, the Bulls, I think, were unexpected so far to start the season. They have Kobe White out there shooting lights out. I saw people making jokes that Kobe White was going to win MVP. I don't think I'm going to go that far, but I really thought that the Bulls were going to be really low seeded this season because they lost Caruso, they lost DeRozan, they lost like a major part of their starting 5. But it seems that they're doing at least okay right now. They won against the Bucks. Again, Kobe White had an amazing game the last few nights. So I think that maybe the Bulls are a team that we're kind of sleeping on right now. Again, only 3 games in the season. But it would be sort of surprising or shocking to see where they end up this season and if they do better than a lot of people expected. With the Timberwolves, Julius Randle has added a lot of offense for the Timberwolves, which I really like. I talked about DiVincenzo's shooting last episode, and Randle adds even more offense. So even though I just said defense wins championships, because defense really would have helped them against Dallas because of Rudy Gobert and stuff, offense obviously is just as important, and offense has been what has been sort of driving the league for a while. And so the Timberwolves are leaning more into that. And I said last episode, and I'm going to stick with it this episode, that because of that, it seems like the Timberwolves are really pushing the pace against a lot of teams, which I really enjoy. And it almost seems like they're playing playoff basketball already, only 3 games into the season. So hopefully they don't get too burnt out doing that. But if they keep that going the whole season, they're going to end up doing really well, and it's going to be a really fun season to watch. With the Nuggets, Russell Westbrook seemed really, really lost with the Nuggets. we've only seen him play a little bit, but if I go to his stats, in the past 2 games he's averaging 20 minutes and he's only has 4 points for those 20 minutes. And that's with 1 turnover, 2 fouls, 1.5 blocks, 1.5 steals, I'll give him that. About 4 assists, 3 rebounds, and that's about it. A 11% field goal and a 11% 3-point as well. But half of those points are coming off of free throws. His free throw attempts per game is 3, and he's only making 50% of those. So out of the 4 points per game, about 2 of them are coming off of free throws right now in 20 minutes. Shout out to CJ Hoop Talks, as a matter of fact, because he posted something as well that I will credit him. And let me go to it real quick. The offensive rating when Nikola Jokic is on the floor is 110.1, and the offensive rating when Nikola Jokic is off the floor is 54.9. When Russell Westbrook is on the floor and Nikola Jokic is not, because, again, the caption for CJ's post says Russell Westbrook has been in for 22 of those 24 minutes without Jokic. The Nuggets are only averaging less than half of what they do when Jokic is on the floor. So it really seems like we're starting to have another Russell Westbrook Lakers situation on our hand. And I mean, I'm happy for it. I'm happy for it as somebody who cheers for the Timberwolves, because that's the one less team that we have to try to play. Or I keep saying we. I shouldn't use we, because everybody's going to claim I'm a bandwagon. But I like the Timberwolves. I really like Anthony Edwards and their team. And I cheered for them last year because I made a bet that they were going to win the championship, and nobody believed me. And then they ended up beating the Nuggets, and I was like, told you guys. But that's one less team that the Timberwolves have to play, so that will make me happy. But I hope for success with Westbrook. I'd much rather Westbrook have a ring than Harden at this point, because I can say that I am now a Harden hater. I really don't like the way that he's jumping from team to team, and I feel like Westbrook has a better heart than Harden, and he's a player I can support more than Harden and some others. So I hope for success with Russell Westbrook. But the Nuggets seem like their championship gap, or their championship chances, even just 3 games into the season, are already really falling short. The Clippers, I actually thought, have been doing well without Paul George. I saw a lot better playmaking whenever I watched their games. I saw passes from Harden, which Harden passing the ball rather than just shooting it was really good for me. Obviously, they have the wall, which a lot of people have commented on, and I'm surprised that there wasn't that much outrage about it, especially because, Booker had his whole thing with the Toronto mascot, and it debuted against the Suns. But I mean, it's legal. Otherwise, the league wouldn't have allowed it. So, but a lot of people were missing free throws, which it'll be interesting to see if more stadiums start to sort of incorporate that, because if it works, then obviously more teams are going to try and pick it up. With the Celtics, again, they're shooting. They had a record, I think it was 39 threes in the first 3 games, which is a great record, but to me is a little disappointing, because I've talked before that I don't want NBA games to constantly just be 3-point contests. I've talked about that a lot. And it seems it's just more and more pushing to that point. Again, I love defense. I love plays in the paint. I love the typical power forward and center position. And now it's just everybody's throwing up shots beyond the arc. And I really want to see sort of traditional position basketball coming back rather than these positionless teams that just chuck up, 43s in playoff games. So, but congratulations to them. I don't like the Boston Celtics as a team to begin with, but even now, but even further, I don't want to cheer for them because that's, again, if they're throwing up threes and they're winning, that's only going to further encourage that behavior. And that's not what I want to see in basketball. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. People are going to want to see people draining threes from beyond half court. Me personally, I want to see more stuff in the paint. I want to see crazy dunks. I want to see defense. I want to see crazy blocks, crazy steals. One of my favorite plays of recent history, at least, not my favorite play of all time. I won't go that far, but of recent history was Drew Holiday's steal to alley-oop to Giannis. And again, I want to see stuff like that. I want to see a good steal that turns into an alley-oop dunk in the paint. Like I don't want to see Drew, like alternative history of that play. Drew Holiday gets the ball, drives it up to half court, takes a shot from half court and drains a three. Like yes, it's a good play. It's a good good shot if it goes in from half court. But I still think it's more exciting to see a steal turn into running up the court, alley-ooped it, dunk on somebody's head. So, I don't know. You guys let me know if you agree with that. But the Sacramento Kings, DeRozan seems to be fitting very well. He, again, is playmaking, which was my worry going into the season was, is he going to ball hog too much? Is he going to fit into the team? Seems like he's fitting into the team. He's playmaking. He's looking for the best available shot from his teammates. He's doing well scoring himself, scoring over 20. He's obviously doing that well in the mid-range, which is what he's known for. But again, I always look for, when I watch the game, something that's out of the ordinary. So I really liked seeing Harden's passes for the Clippers, and I really liked seeing DeRozan's passes with the Kings. Much rather than DeRozan taking every possession and shooting from mid-range, I liked DeRozan's playmaking with the Kings. And that just goes to show Mike Brown's coaching, which I've talked about before, and I really like Mike Brown's coaching. Klay Thompson, let's talk about Klay Thompson. Is Klay Thompson back? So, again, a lot of people dogged on him in preseason, but the last game of preseason and these first few games of regular season, he seems like he's shooting well again. He seems like he's sort of back. And I think that sort of goes into what I said last episode, which is it may just all be in his head. And once he gets past that, he'll be shooting well. So maybe it was all in his head and he's kind of sort of shaken that a bit. And I'm a Spurs fan, so I can't really cheer for the Mavericks. I can cheer for Luka individually, but I'm glad that Klay individually is back because he does not deserve the hate that he receives for a couple bad games of going 0-9 and 0-10. And I've seen some people say, the classic, like, Klay is washed. He's a terrible player. He needs to retire. Like, people going that far. And it's like, he's just had a couple bad games. Like, let's just see how it turns out. Let's not say he's washed. Let's not say that his career is over. And now he's back at it, and he's shooting pretty well again. So, I personally would love to see a team other than the Mavs do well, just because I am a Spurs fan, and there's sort of that Texas rivalry there. Like, I can't cheer for the Rockets either. I know that I have a pennant of, ironically, if I can turn the camera, I have a pennant of the Rockets there, but that's because that was gifted to me as a joke by one of my lifelong friends whenever I said that I was moving to a college in Houston, which is how the podcast started in the first place. And also, just being a basketball channel, I can't only have the Spurs. I got to show that I support some other teams as well. But with that being said, I can't really cheer for the Rockets ever, can't really cheer for the Mavs ever, unless it's against the Celtics. So I cheered for the Mavs in the championship, I'll say that. But I'm glad that KLAY is doing really well again. And the Mavs may have a new big three now, and we'll see how it goes. So, how are we doing on time here? 35 minutes in? Okay. We're about 30 minutes in, so that's good on timing, because the last thing I'm going to talk about is the Kawhi lawsuit, which is probably going to take the last 20 to 30 minutes of the podcast anyway. So, for those that don't know or have not caught up yet, you guys can hear it from me. Kawhi Leonard's personal trainer, athletic trainer, is suing the Los Angeles Clippers on behalf, well, not on behalf legally, but sort of for the sake of Kawhi, because he feels that the Clippers tampered and have permanently destroyed Kawhi Leonard's body, which will result in an early retirement and lifelong health problems. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the trainer talked very negatively about the Clippers' actions. He talked about how the Clippers destroyed his health. I watched a couple. It's always interesting when you see people get out of their, or collaborate in sort of an area that they usually wouldn't, just because it sort of creates a Venn diagram with their field. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll see people like Dr. Mike or Legal Eagle dive into something because it has to deal with the medical field, or it has to deal with, like, the legal field. And sort of the same thing is happening here, where not necessarily those two big names, but I saw that some doctor YouTubers were diving into the Kawhi lawsuit, because there are a lot of medical things that are mentioned in the lawsuit, of course, with the nature of the lawsuit. And a lot of the doctors confirmed that a lot of the ACL treatment wasn't too out of the ordinary, which I found interesting, which they're definitely going to bring up in the lawsuit if that happens, if, like, this goes to court, is that some doctors agree that the ACL treatment was normal just based on what was in the lawsuit documents. But they did say that in the lawsuit, they said that Kawhi had a concussion and the Clippers did nothing about it. And even without being a doctor, you can agree that's pretty damning. But the doctor YouTubers talked a lot about that and how detrimental that can be. But again, even without being a doctor, it's like, if you have a concussion, that's damage to your brain, and you need to take a rest, because the more continued damage you do to it, the more there can be permanent damage and permanent effects of that, and so on. Even though this is an NBA channel, you guys can go watch, that movie Concussion with Will Smith, and it dives into CTE and everything of NFL players. But again, that's NFL. We're not as rough in the NBA, but still, it goes into, if you have a concussion, something needs to be done about it. That's hence why the movie's called Concussion. So there was also a huge issue with tampering, and KLAY and the Spurs fan talked a lot about this as well, which, if these tampering claims are true, a lot of people debate about, should the Spurs have done this, should the Spurs have done that in order to keep Kawhi? What would our season be? What would our franchise be like if we never lost Kawhi, right? Should we have tried harder to keep him? But if these claims turn out to be true, there's nothing that the Spurs could have done. And it means that Toronto and the Spurs and so many I was about to say so many other franchises, but I guess it's actually just the Spurs and Toronto. But the Spurs and Toronto lost out on Kawhi and definitely got fleeced and basically got bent over and just screwed. Like, absolutely. In the lawsuit, they say that, quote, the tampering claims include the Clippers attending 75% of Leonard's games during the 2018 to 2019 season with the Raptors in attempts to gauge his interest in the Clippers through Shelton. So if that's true, again, three-fourths even. I was thinking three because of three-fourths and I said a third, but it's way more than a third. 75% of games the Clippers executives or scouts went to. So that means that potentially in the playoffs, a game against Toronto and the 76ers, the Clippers were there. A game against the finals against the Warriors, the Clippers were there. It could be a random game. It could be the Raptors versus the Indiana Pacers. The Clippers were there. The Clippers have no reason to be there other than they're trying to investigate Kawhi and keep an eye on him. And what's interesting is that they say gauge his interest in the Clippers through Shelton. So a big reason that this lawsuit is going through Kawhi's personal trainer is not just because of the health stuff where they thought that they did not do a good job with Kawhi's health, but also the fact that the Clippers were sort of using Shelton as their inside guy, like their double agent in a way, where I'll just read the quote where it says, according to the lawsuit, a Clippers executive contacted Shelton for private health information, quote unquote, in 2017. The lawsuit alleged that the two parties spoke approximately 15 times. So that brings into question what sort of information that Shelton was giving up, because it says private health information. So that could be dangerous for Shelton because, again, I'm not a lawyer, but that could mean potential violations of HIPAA for Shelton as well. But for the two to have talked 15 times in 2017 before he even went to the Raptors shows how this was already a thing set in motion. This was already a thing before he even went to the Raptors, that the Clippers were trying to get him. So him only staying on the Raptors for 1 year was already a done deal where he was going to leave the Raptors. There was nothing that either team could do because they were trying to swindle their way around this. And again, they were sort of using Shelton against Kawhi. They were using Shelton as like their inside guy and as like their bait and everything like that, because apparently, quote, allegedly the Clippers discussed bringing Shelton into the Clippers organization as a strength and conditioning coach given the personal relationship and trust that Leonard had and Shelton. So for those of you that don't know, I haven't mentioned this yet, but Shelton was Kawhi's personal trainer all the way back when he played for San Diego State University. This is Kawhi's personal trainer that has been with him since college and has followed him every single step of the way. And they were trying to sort of use that where they were saying to Shelton, they were saying like, hey, if you get Kawhi on our team, we'll hire you and we'll also give you like a bit of a promotion. So, it's in your best interests to try and get Kawhi over to the Clippers. And they were really trying to swindle and sort of weave their way to get Kawhi by saying Like, yeah, we'll hire you. You just need to get him. Like, hey, if you get a deal with Kawhi, we'll make a deal with you. And trying to make it a win-win situation. They were trying to get to Kawhi through Shelton and manipulating relationships and everything like that. And the article that I looked up was from Sporting News, and they go on to say, quote, furthermore, according to the lawsuit, Lawrence Frank, the Clippers president of basketball operations, assured Shelton a job if Leonard joined the Los Angeles franchise in 2019 free agency. So once again, rather than going to Kawhi directly, they were trying to use Shelton as an undercover double agent middleman, where they were trying to get Shelton to urge Kawhi to go to the Clippers in order to get Shelton a job. And they finish up by saying, ultimately, Shelton got the job either by coincidence or a product of tampering. And I thought it was interesting, sort of the statement that the Clippers and the NBA made about this, where the NBA claimed that they are not aware of the lawsuit, which they had to be aware of the lawsuit because the public is aware of the lawsuit now. And the NBA is, a $1 billion company. They certainly knew what was going on. Or not what was going on, but like not like the actual tampering, but like that a lawsuit was going to happen or is happening. So I thought that it was interesting to see that the NBA, quote, had no knowledge of the lawsuit. And what's interesting is that this is only coming up because they later fired Shelton. They fired the trainer from the Los Angeles Clippers, and now this lawsuit is coming out, which again, they're just sort of disposing him like an old toy, like something they don't need anymore. Cue the Andy dropping Woody meme of like, I don't want to play with you anymore.
Oh, I forgot. You're broken. I don't want to play with you anymore.
That's sort of what they did to him, where they got Kawhi, and now it's 5 years later in 2024, and they fire him because they're like, we have Kawhi, we don't really need you anymore. But again, this has been Kawhi's personal trainer for years now. Since Kawhi was in college. So now with this lawsuit coming out, and now with his trainer gone, does that mean Kawhi is starting to look for the door from the Clippers? That could either mean retiring, or that could mean just looking for another team entirely, especially now that Paul George is gone. We'll see what happens with that. But it's very interesting to see that they were like, yeah, bring Kawhi over and we'll get you a job. And then they get what they actually wanted, which was Kawhi, and they're like, well, we don't need you anymore because we got what we wanted, so you're fired now. And they sort of manipulated the system in that way because in their statement, they said that these were false allegations made up by a disgruntled fired employee, which to me just sounds like the PR response, and I don't believe it at all. I'm more inclined to believe the personal trainer. But again, they are a huge corporation as an NBA team. They have good lawyers, they have a good legal team, whatever it is. And they're going to game the system in that way, and they're going to try to twist around facts in the way that makes them look out on top and give that PR response where they're saying, oh, these are just false claims made by a past employee that got fired. But I really don't think that somebody would, even if he was that angry about getting fired, I don't think he would make up all of these different things in detail. Like these claims in a lawsuit are too detailed to be made up. And I don't think that he would make all these things up if they could be so easily disproven by Kawhi or other witnesses and things like that. But But the whole tampering with Shelton as well, there's also a lot of evidence towards that as well, because they reported that Shelton got hired to the Clippers July 1st, 2019. Then later, there were reports from Bleacher Report, House of Highlights, the NBA themselves on July 5th that Kawhi was signing to the Clippers. So the official report that Kawhi went to the Clippers came 4 days after Shelton was hired to the Clippers, meaning that they really were trying to use Shelton to get Kawhi to the Clippers. And again, there was a lot of debate about Kawhi's treatment, especially in the lawsuit. I remember reading part of the lawsuit that said that the condition that Kawhi had meant that he would have to sit out for 2 full years for full recovery, but he can't do that as an NBA player, and a lot of people have commented on that, where they can't sign him to a contract and have him literally sit out 2 full seasons. But again, if that's what the injury calls for, that's what the injury calls for. And after all, that's what happened with Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson damaged his, I think it was his ACL as well, in that season with, ironically, the finals against the Raptors. And then he came back and then got injured again and was basically out for 2 seasons and still got paid his contract. So I don't see why they couldn't do the same with Kawhi and the Clippers, where it's like, hey, if you're injured, you're injured. You know, you're still entitled to that money. But I am going to keep very close eyes on this lawsuit. I'm going to continue to watch some games and highlights so that I can keep up with the season and give my thoughts as the season goes on in these episodes. But I really think that that's the biggest story for this episode, obviously, is the Kawhi lawsuit. And the more I read about this, the more I am just blown away. Of course, being a Spurs fan, that adds even more into it. Of course, I think it works out for us because I personally like the team we have now. I like Wemby. I like Sohan. I like all of the team, and I'll continue to support them for as long as I can. Probably as long as I'm alive, hopefully. But, so would I have liked to have kept Kawhi? Yes, but I'm content with how our team is now. But I personally, like, maybe that's the toxic side of me, where I just kind of like seeing drama, to be honest, as well. So that's another part of me that kind of likes this lawsuit. But so I'm going to keep up with this lawsuit, and I will give you guys updates in future episodes, and I will give you guys updates to my thoughts the more I watch games and highlights and all that good stuff. And I assume that we're probably coming up on 45 minutes to an hour or so here. So I think I will go ahead and end it there. I had some other stuff about like hot takes and stuff like that. Or actually, no. I actually have some stuff about the WNBA, so I'll tag that on at the end of the episode here. So, again, there's a lot of controversy about how the finals ended. It ended in a 3-2 matchup. And again, some of you may not know because some of you may not watch WNBA. The WNBA is not best of 7 like the NBA. It is best of 5. It took a long time before the NBA themselves were best of 7 as well. The NBA for a long time was best of 5. So the WNBA is kind of like old NBA in that sense of best of 5. And I actually watched some of the games. I watched some of the highlights. And again, a lot of people like to dog on the WNBA, but there are some good players in there. And it was a pretty entertaining finals. And the women played very well. It was very good to see. But there was controversy with how it ended because obviously the coach talked about how it was robbed from them, all that good stuff. And me personally, I think there's a lot to go into there, but I will say that I did not like the coach's attitude towards the whole thing. She was cursing. She was having bad sportsmanship, which it's understandable because it's frustrating if you feel like the game was cheated from you. but it gave me sort of the same vibes as the Nuggets when they lost to the Timberwolves. Everybody hated the Nuggets coach and how he was angry at the interviewers and the reporters simply for the fact that he lost. And it's like, the reporters are just doing their job, man. Like, they're just asking you questions, and you're just bummed out that you lost. You don't got to take it out on them. But so I really did not like the attitude of Cheryl Reeves, especially because she said that officiating isn't hard. And that's something that I very much disagree with. A lot of people can talk about how, ref calls are bad. In the NBA, we see a lot of that. In other sports, we see a lot of that, with the NFL, with football, soccer, whatever sport you watch, people complain about the refs. But officiating is a pretty difficult job sometimes, especially with how far up you go. I've refed a lot of youth leagues in my time, and even youth leagues sometimes. Youth leagues can be moving very fast, very quickly. It's hard to get calls right, see everything that's happening, and just based on where you're standing, you could maybe not see where an arb's going. You could not see a foul. You could think something was a foul when it wasn't. And that's just youth league. That's just teenagers. Imagine college basketball being crazier than that. And then besides college, you have G League. And besides G League, you have the actual NBA, WNBA professional basketball. Officiating is not that easy, despite what people may think. So that really struck a nerve with me and really rubbed me the wrong way. Because again, it's the same thing with the Nuggets with the Nuggets coach. The Nuggets coach was calling out reporters' questions, and it's like the reporters are just doing their job, and you're the one that lost the game. It's the same thing. It's like, don't say that the refs like can't do their job and that their job's easy. You just come off as like a Karen in that way, saying like, "Oh, I could do your job better than you." It's in bad taste, and to me personally. With that being said, there was a lot of discrepancies with the free throws. A lot of people brought up the free throws I actually looked at the free throws first, and then I saw as I dived into it that a lot of other people were talking about it. But there were 25 free throws to the team that won, which was the Liberty, compared to 8 free throws from the Minnesota Lynx. So that's a huge discrepancy there. That's a discrepancy of that's a discrepancy of 17 free throws. You can compare that to the Kings-Lakers series that a lot of people are controversial about back in 2002, I believe. There was a huge controversy around that series that the refs made the Lakers win because it would be a more exciting series and sell more money. And that had more free throws, of course, but less of a discrepancy. It had 40 free throws compared to 25 free throws, which is only a 15 free throw difference, again, compared to that WNBA game of the 17th. However, even if the officiating was bad, I don't think that it was robbed from the Lynx. I think that the Liberty played really well. The finals MVP for the Liberty won practically every award this season. I don't think Ionescu should have been posing with the trophy and doing all that she was doing because she shot 1 for 19. So she was definitely, even though she's sort of the headliner for the Liberty, again, she was the one, I believe she was the one that went up against Curry in the free throw or in the 3-point contest. Even though she's the most popular, she was not the best player on the team in that finals. And but they played really well, and as much as I don't like Stephen A. Smith sometimes, Stephen A. Smith had a really good point in regards to that, saying that it wouldn't have been an issue that Game 5 was quote-unquote stolen from you if you would have done better in Game 3 and Game 4. So, and that's kind of my take on it, because I don't remember who I heard this from, but I thought it was very wise. I could have heard it from somebody on the internet. I could have admittedly heard it from my dad, heard it from somebody. I don't remember who it was that told me this. But they said that bad officiating is simply part of the game. You have to, as a coach and as players, battle through it. And it's just a part of the game where you have to do well enough to get around the officiating, because there's going to be bad calls for one team, there's going to be bad calls for another team, and it's how you handle those bad calls that really help you win the game. Not to get into whole like equal rights issues and make it a political thing, but whenever I made my history of the Black Five video, the New York Rens, they talked about how they would try and get a 10-point lead to start the game because they knew that the refs were going to be bad for them. They knew, again, I quoted it in that video where they said they had to start off with a 10-point lead because those were the 10 points that the refs would try and take away from them simply because they were non-white players. And not to say that, like, that's an ongoing issue now, but the whole point of why I bring that up is because you have to play around the officiating, and that's what the New York Rens did through civil rights. And obviously it's not a civil rights issue here. I'm not saying that, but it goes to the point of, like, even then they knew they had to play around the officiating. And now, even if it's not targeted bad officiating just happens, and you have to play around it, and that's part of the game. And so rather than complain about bad officiating, I would rather, as a team and as a player, look at what you could have done better. Because again, if you win the 3 games that you lost, then if you won at least one of the games that you lost, because it was a 3-2 best of 5 series. You win one of those games you lost, and it's a 3-1 swing the other way where you win the finals. You don't even go to a game 5. So, but that's just sort of my opinion on that. I think, yes, the officiating was bad, but don't blame it for the reason you lost. There are several factors that go into losing, and the Liberty played really well. I think the Liberty did play really well. So again, I know a lot of people don't really pay attention when I talk about WNBA, don't watch the WNBA, but I like covering it, especially when interesting stuff happens like the finals and this huge story about the officiating. So, but again, I'll keep up with what comes out with that, because maybe that game is investigated and some findings come up. I'll keep up with the Kawhi lawsuit, let you know what happens with that. Let you know some more of my opinions on the teams as the games happen. And so I think that's all I got for this episode. So with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one, guys. Nathan Burnett, episode 6.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.